Hello everyone, my name is Renick Biot, BSIT 2A. For today's topic, I'm going to discuss about the following topic, the Bretton Woods system. The Bretton Woods 5K elements, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade or the GATT, and the World Trade Organization or the WTO. The International Monetary Fund IMF and the World Bank, the Organization for for Economic Cooperation and Development or the OECD, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries or the OPEC, and the European Union or the EU, North American Free Trade Agreement or the NAFTA, History of Global Integration, the Agricultural Revolution and the Industrial Revolution, Capitalism and Socialism, the Information Revolution, and the global corporation. The Bretton Woods system is a commonly understood to refer to the international monetary regime that prevailed from the end of the World War II until early 1970s. Taking its name from the site of the 1944 conference that created the International Monetary Fund or the IMF and the World Bank. The Bretton Woods system was history's first example of a fully negotiated monetary order intended to govern currency relations among sovereign states. After the World War II, it was clear that the world needed a new financial system. The gold standards was considered too rigid, but at the same time, the economists were worried that the countries would devalue their currency. So to boost their exports, for this reason, 44 delegates were sent to conference held in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire as, as of the 1st of July 1944. The US, which held the two-thirds of the world gold reserves after the war, was obviously the most influential player, and ultimately all currencies ended up linked to the dollar, and the dollar was linked to gold. One important concern arose: though if a country goes through an economic crisis, how can it get out of it without devaluing its currency? To address the issue, two institutions was created. One, the IMF or the International Monetary Fund, which was supposed to lend money to countries that are in trouble and cannot attract financing from other sources. Two, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is now called the World Bank. It was supposed to help less developed countries scrub. Unfortunately, as good as it may have on paper, the Bretton Woods system didn't survive because the United States kept running deficits to fund various projects, and therefore the amount of dollars existence kept increasing while the gold reserve of US kept shrinking. As more countries demanded gold in exchange for their dollars, as such, on the 15th of August 1971, Nixon officially announced that dollar would no longer be convertible to gold. So, thereby putting the Bretton Woods system to end. Next is the Bretton Woods 5 elements. The first element is the expression of currency in terms of gold or gold value to establish a upper value. Second, the official monetary authority in each country, a central bank or its equivalent, would agree to exchange its own currency for those who other countries at established exchange rates, plus or minus a 1% margin. Third, the establishment of an overseer for these exchange rates. The International Monetary Fund or the IMF was founded. Fourth element eliminating restrictions on the currencies of member states in the international trade. Fifth element, the US dollar became the global currency. Next topic is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or the GATT, and the World Trade Organization, or the WTO. General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was formed in 1940s to reduce harmful barriers that arose during the Great Depression that were a major cause of World War II. The GATT was later replaced by the World Trade Organization, or the WTO, the only global organization that created rules of trade among its member nations. As global trade increased in the 1980s, so did trading issues among nations. It was clear that GATT would not support the influx of new trading challenges. After years of unsuccessful negotiation rounds, the largest round of 117 countries finally took place in Uruguay. This was known as the Uruguay Round, which was significant for the birth of the WTO. Through the WTO, trade barriers were reduced and more trade rules were established. The WTO is not just an extension and successor of the GATT. Rather, it's an entirely separate entry. The GATT was multilateral treaty created on an ad hoc basis. The participating nations were contracting parties. The WTO, on the other hand, is a permanent institution made up of member nations. Another difference is that the rules of the GATT apply to trade in tangible goods. The rules of the WTO but also deal with services and intellectual property. The WTO dispute settlement system is also considered much faster and more effective than that the GATT system. WTO promote international trade. Members of the trading nation negotiate through the WTO agreement or contracts that address the legal framework for conducting global businesses. These contracts would help to ensure that the trade runs as smoothly and as fairly as possible. As a result, consumers benefit from cheaper prices as well as a diverse supply of goods. And the producer benefit from new markets and employment opportunities. Both the GATT and the WTO have been successful impacting the global economic community by facilitating smoother trade and creating a fair venue for handling disputes regarding trade issues. Next is the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, and the World Bank. The IMF and the World Bank have been founded just like the UN after the World War II. Why? Mainly because after the war, everyone wanted a peace. However, peace on an empty stomach is hard to maintain. So these two institutions were created to help the economic stability of the world. Both of them are basically banks, but instead of being started by individuals, are regular banks. They've been started by countries. Most of the world's countries are the members of the two institutions. But of course, the richest countries are those who handled most of the financing and ultimately those who have the great influence. The IMF and the World Bank were designed to complement each other. The IMF main goal is helping countries who are currently in trouble and who cannot get money by other means. Perhaps their economy collapse. Perhaps this currency is in danger. The IMF in this case is kind of like a lender of last resort who go to when nobody else is willing to give you money. The World Bank in comparison has a more long-term approach. Its main goals revolve around the eradication of poverty and its funds. Specifically, projects would help them to reach these goals. especially in poor countries. Unfortunately, the reputation of this institution has been twinned. It's mainly due to practices such as lending the corrupt governments or even dictators, and, and imposing ineffective austerity measures to get their money back. If run properly, however, they definitely could help make the world a better place. Next is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and the European Union, or the EU. The Marshall Plan, officially called the European Recovery Program, was created by the US with the humanitarian intention of helping European nations to recover after the World War II. Whereas the GR strategic goal was stopping the spread of Marxism and shaping the European policy. It was announced by George Marshall on the 5th of June 1947 and primarily ended up benefiting Western Europe, mainly because the USSR refused to lift essential in Eastern European countries that were under its sphere of influence be involved to administer the mostly US. US provided financial and organizational for European Economic Cooperation, or the OEEC, was founded in 1948, and by 1951 the US had contributed with roughly 130 billion in today's dollars. While definitely not enough to fix Europe's problems, it helped tremendously. Think of it as an important ingredient, not a miracle solution. The main beneficiary of the Marshall Plan and the OECD was the United Kingdom, followed by the France and the West Germany. With the help of the OEEC, the European Economic Community, which is since the European Union established a European free trade area by the end of the 50s. Some OEEC members thought that the goal of rebuilding Europe had been reached, as such as the organization was reformed in 1961, and its name changed to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD. To highlight its broader global scope today, OECD can be considered as a super think tank that tries to shape international policy to it, from publishing papers and database to maintaining attacks, haven blacklist, assisting the academic performance of students from various countries. While the OPEC, Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, is a permanent intergovernmental organization founded in 1960 of nation that exports large amount of petroleum, formed to establish oil exporting policies and set prices, is an example of an international cartel. EU, or the European Union. The modern European Union, founded in 1992, has its origins in post-World War II attempts to integrate the European economies and prevents future conflicts. The aim of European Union within the borders are to promote peace, its values, and well-being of its citizens, offer freedom, security, and justice without internal borders. Next is the North American Free Trade Agreement, or the NAFTA. NAFTA is a trade pact between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Created on January 1, 1994, when Mexico joined the two other nations, it was created in the 1989 with only Canada and the United States as trading partners. NAFTA helps in developing and expanding world trade by the broadening international cooperation. It also aims to increase cooperation for improving working conditions in North America by reducing barriers to trade as it expands free crown countries. The creation of NAFTA has caused manufacturing jobs from developed countries to transfer in less developed nations in order to reduce the cost of their products. The free trade, however, gave the modest impact on US GDP. It has become 127 US dollar billion richer each year due to trade growth. For examples, NAFTA created specific rules to regulate trade in farm products, automobiles, and clothing. For example, third exporters were required to get certificates or origin to waive tariffs. Next is history of global integration. The integration of the global market started when big American corporations began to emerge after the Second World War. With this rise of new conglomerates, global integration is the process by which a company combines different activities around the world so that they operate using the same methods. For example, many new markets like insurance, transportation, and banking services have grown due to it. Furthermore, people now have access to more choices and international brands because of the between countries. The Agricultural Revolution and the Industrial Revolution. The first big economic changes was the Agricultural Revolution when learned how to domesticate plants and animals. They realized that it was much more productive than hunter-gatherer societies. This became the new agriculture economy. Example, Neolithic Revolution or the first agricultural revolution was the wide-scale transition of many human cultures during the Neolithic period from a lifestyle of hunting, gathering to one of agriculture and settlement making. An increasingly large population. Next is the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution in modern history, the process of change from an agrarian and handicraft economy to one dominated by industry and machine manufacturing. These technological changes introduce novel ways of working and living and fundamentally transform society. For example, among the most important inventors of the first industrial revolution include the steam engine, the spinning jenny, cotton gin, and the telegraph. Next is the capitalism and the socialism. Capitalism revolves around the private property, products, and services are supposed to provide by individuals who sell on the open market based on supplying them. And however, people like Karl Marx considered capitalism unfair towards the average worker and wanted to create a system in which one is equal. Marx said capitalism needs to initially be replaced by socialism. Under socialism, the state would gain control over the main of the production such as land and natural resources. In his view, socialism itself would eventually replaced by communism under which absolutely everyone is equal and the state doesn't even have to exist. So far contrary to what most people think, communism as defined by Marx never materialized anywhere. Even in the USSR, you still in a state and therefore it was not something Marx would consider communism. It was still socialism. As of 1848, socialism spread to a lot of countries. The economic model, however, wasn't very efficient as illustrated by poor economic performance of the USSR. And the countries under its sphere of influence today, that form of socialism only exists in isolated countries such as North Korea and the Venezuela. Instead, socialism is more when we now have three main trends. 1. Chinese socialism with the high dose of capitalism but no democracy. Second is the democratic socialism such in Northern Europe with democracy and private property but redistribution through high levels of taxation. Third is the socialism is a component of capitalism. Precedent countries such as the US or UK which lean more towards capitalism but still have state-funded social program as can be seen pure communism and capitalism. At this point, and instead, we have various combinations between the two. The information revolution. Describe current economic, social, and technological trends beyond the industrial revolution. The main feature of the information revolution is the growing economic, social, and technological role of information. Example is the internet. With the internet, it's possible to access almost any information, communicate with anyone else in the world, and do much more. The internet is a global communication network that allows almost all computers worldwide to connect and exchange information. And last is the global corporation. Global corporation is a multinational company with a business that operates in 2 or more countries. Global corporation started globalization was initiated. Countries are able to engage with other countries in trade and industry. With influence of technology, GE, Nestle, and Procter & Gamble are the example of companies with an increasingly global mindset. So, sila yung mga example ng global corporation like Procter & Gamble, Nestle, and the GE.